Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is part 2 of our podcast series. First one was scaling a company. This one is diversification. That is a hard word to pronounce for me.
Diversification.
Diversification.
What does that mean to you?
It means not keeping all your eggs in one basket.
I like that.
In a nutshell. Hence I said nutshell. I should have said eggshell. Let's get right into it. So diversification for Premier, it is close to your heart. That I've heard you say this before. So talk to me about diversification.
So diversification. So when we formed Premier together,
Yeah.
Near and dear to your heart was unit interior renovations. So the remodeling of apartment interiors. It's something you've got decades of experience at. You're really good at it.
Sound old.
Now, for me, it's construction. It's the actual, the exteriors, the rest of the work aside from what you were really good at. So we diversified in the fact that we came together and we did not just one specialty in the market, but we teamed together to cover both.
Yeah.
So that's a small level. That's a bi-corded diversification, but it has more than that.
But it was important in the beginning to have that.
It was very important.
Especially for, obviously, part 1 of the series was scalability, and even locally, that opened up many more doors that were afforded to us if I would have just started Premier, not brought you on, or brought you on in a certain element, and we just stuck with one element of, I just said element twice, that was funny, but stuck with renovations, for instance. So,
we've seen that had we stuck to just one line of business, funding would have been quite a challenge. We've seen with the pay cycles of those types of projects that we needed the funding elsewhere.
It would have limited our growth cycle as well.
Correct. It would have definitely limited us.
Yeah.
So being diversified in more than one line of business, we were able to self-fund other projects in different segments of our business.
Gotcha. So get back to diversification. We have renovations, we have construction as a company. That's one element that for the viewers, listeners out there, if you have one area of business that you hyper-focus on, there are obviously companies out there that focus, let's say, again, like on part 1, I mentioned retail a lot. You've got a lot of retail companies out there. But that also could fall under the retail world as well, because you might have one product line that you sell a lot of, but people are going to just know you for that one product line. So diversification, for instance, in a retail space would obviously be bring in more product, bring in a different variety of product, bring in jewelry, bring in hats, or whatever it would be. I'm just using obviously retail clothing line, for instance. But for us as a company, we had renovations, we had construction. We knew that that diversification was going to be very positive for us in the long run. Let's talk about, and I'll let you just roll with it. Let's talk about diversification. Part 1 of our series, we talked about scaling. How does scaling and diversification go hand in hand when it comes to growth for a company?
So we've talked about in the past, we know that certain clients might know Joe Flores. They might know Clay Floyd. They don't necessarily know your company and what it can do. So the chances of a company taking you as Premier or whoever your company may be and giving you the keys to the kingdom and giving you a large project, probably not going to happen. So when you're diversified, you're able to step in a smaller scale, step in, for instance, where we're at with unit turns or smaller construction projects, and we've been able to move up into larger projects because we were diversified.
And we were willing to take on the smaller jobs, obviously, to prove ourselves as a company to get the larger jobs, which sometimes that takes. Again, whether they know Clay Floyd or Joe Flores, personally, that's a great starting point. But they have people they have to answer to. We've talked about this before. And when you have other people that have to answer to that are in locations that are not local, they don't know who we are, it's all about proving yourself.
So, and back to being diversified, so in distant locations. So when you're scaling into another market, being able to go to these clients and speak to them and say, look, we can offer you this service, or this service. And that's being diversified in that manner. It gives them options on how they can use you. You can then establish yourself and move into the different lines of business. So, such as we're able to get into other markets, like we have the ability to service retail. You mentioned retail. We can
Correct.
do full commercial TIs. We can do exterior work on those retail spaces. That's commercial work. We're not just in the multifamily commercial arena, but also in full commercial.
So when it comes to diversification, you just talked about retail, for instance, right? And it's not something that we really throw out there to anybody, really. We've had limited exposure, I would say. We definitely know it, but we haven't hyper focused on it here in the Pacific Northwest. We've really focused on the multifamily aspect because obviously as a new company in the beginning, we're 4 years old. We're not as new anymore, but you really stick with what you know you're good at, right? And for us, obviously multifamily was the thing we knew we were good at. But we have been asked. We have done medical facility, for instance, and we've done other things. We've looked at hotels. So let's talk about, we have looked at those. We have done some of those in the Pacific Northwest, but I will repeat, it's not necessarily in the Pacific Northwest the thing that we're known for or what we go after every day, like we do multifamily. Does that change when we go to a different state possibly?
It can change because, as you mentioned in the prior episode, each market can be different.
Yeah.
So we can't have the expectation that everything we've been doing is going to be the same. So we have to be diversified in the fact that we look at other segments of the market and we take those on for work.
And part of that growth, I think what's important for the viewers and listeners out there, part of that growth strategy that we talked about in the previous episode, growth in itself doesn't necessarily mean we want to be the biggest and the best. Growth can also mean, and it has for us, now stepping into those commercial elements. That is a point of growth that we've now looked at and said we are ready to potentially look at if we're going to go to these different states. We know that we will get some multifamily work, but are we going to put all of our eggs in that basket? And that we obviously started this episode with, what is diversification to myself? Putting all your eggs in one basket, what not to do. So in this particular case, that's what I'm referring to, is going to different states now. We are looking at other areas of income, other areas of business that we don't necessarily look at here in Washington. And now we are going to start walking that walk out. Now, some of those are clients, kind of going off here for a second, but some of those are clients who have asked us, do you do retail establishments? Because as we know, mixed use is no longer just apartments that are on slab and they're just a building. A lot of apartment complexes now are mixed use where they have retail establishments down below. And we have found that it's very good as a contractor to not be able to just do the apartment side of it, but also afford them the opportunity of walkthroughs, even that due diligence process we've talked about previous episodes on doing it retail and walking it through with them on the retail side and giving our opinion on what we think, or helping them build out that TI or tenant improvement. If it is a commercial retail restaurant, whatever it is, we have the ability to do that. So going to these different states for Premier, we've talked in the previous episode about hitting certain states. Can you remind the audience members and listeners, viewers, everybody out there, what were those states again that we're looking at going to?
Target states in order are Idaho, Montana, Texas, Colorado, and Arizona.
And Arizona is our last one because it is an oversaturated market. We have found that. We've had a lot of interest, but it's pretty freaking hot there. It's really hot there. And I think a lot of us are a little hesitant of the heat. But it is also a hot market when it comes to a lot of people there, people we know there that are working there, that have moved there. So it's probably the last on our agenda. So you mentioned these states again. What does that look like as far as a company diversification for us?
Well, what I think that it means for us is we're going to set those appointments with those clients and we're going to ask the questions, the difficult questions of, hey, what really are your budgets? What are you looking to spend on these projects over the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, so we know what their plan is, and then ask them directly, how do you see us fitting into that? So we can start planning those markets.
Again, that partnership. It's got to be a partnership. You're not scaling unless you have people that already believe in you here to be able to go somewhere else. They got to believe in you for
Correct,
sure.
yeah. And then planning those markets with our clients specifically. And again, having a key group of clients that we work closely with, that we expand or diversify with them, and then we start adding on new clients in those markets.
For sure. And explain a little bit about what our mindset is going into these different markets when it comes to previous episode. You mentioned we would talk about hospitality. What are all the markets that not just us as a company, but you feel a construction company that wants to be diversified, that doesn't want to, you could have a viewer, listener out there that says, hey, listen, I want to do these certain things, right? I want to go to a different state. That'd be awesome. But I'm only good at this, or I only know how to do this. So for us as a company, go into a little bit more detail on what type of, you mentioned retail, but what are we looking for in these different states?
So I'd back it up for a second. I would say I'd remind the audience of one thing that you previously said. We're an uncomfortable company.
That's right.
We don't only sit in our comfort zone, and that's what we're going to push you to do the same thing. Look for things that are uncomfortable for you and become the area of expertise on those through research, through applied practice, actually doing the work. So for us, that's where it's at. We're going to learn about these things and become the professionals and make it for our clients where it just makes sense for them to only come to us and a few others to perform these projects.
When it comes to hospitality, when it comes to, let's get into it a little bit about what areas, what businesses, what type of business structures are we looking for when we're going to these different states? Multifamily, let's just shelve that for a second. Let's just say, you know what, multifamily's not there, Clay Floyd. They have very limited or whatever. Well, we can get to a state. I'll back this up. We can get to a state. We can have all the great partnerships in the world. We can have all the great expectations in the world to be able to succeed in those states. Again, if we don't have the bread or the food to nourish us, and that food runs out, for instance, and these clients stop doing certain things, what are we going to do as a company?
Well, we have experience in other markets with diversification. We have the hospitality, so hotels, motels, with the capability
Holidays
to do.
Inn.
We have the capability to do any of the construction projects and renovations they need. We also have assisted living or retirement homes. We've actually done these before previously. We also have the experience to take existing hotels in markets that are saturated where they don't need hotels, and we can do full conversions, convert these hotels back to apartments so there's additional living. We know, I recently read a stat that there's 75 million incoming baby boomers who are going to be looking for places to live. The last number I think I heard was 55,000 houses we're currently building to fill the need. That's not going to touch that many people who are coming online needing places to live and rent.
That's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people.
So when it comes to, let's use retirement communities, for instance, it's something that you and I have talked about for a long time. People that have reached out to us to do them, not to the volume or scale that we were looking for at that time. So we actually didn't do them because there just wasn't enough actually there for us to see a profit or to gain on. What does that look like going to different states? When we talk about our company being diversified, what does that look like going to different states and working at a company, let's say, for instance, Aegis Living or one of these other ones? How does that resemble close to what we do already?
Well, there are buildings, just like the apartment buildings that we work on now. It's a building that has siding, it has windows that fail, it has roofs that fail, it has deck coatings and decks that fail. It has concrete. It needs to be new asphalt, seal coated and restriped. All the same things that we do on an apartment complex.
And renovated,
they need
right?
them. And renovated, correct.
So I think for the audience members out there, the big thing to realize is you might be in an area within your own company that you feel like is very stagnant or very controlled because it's one area, right? It's one central business idea. But if you expand, for us as a company, thinking outside the box is our, basically our motto when it comes to that. What we do is we think about what other areas of business can we tackle or jump into that do closely relate to what we currently do now? Again, it's not multifamily. So I think that's the key right there is a lot of people feel like, well, I can't do this or I'm not able to do this because it's not XYZ. They're not seeing that it's a building with windows, with a roof. They still need to be renovated. I didn't know that. Well, if you do your research, you'd find out that these places are very similar to multifamily establishments. Yes, the demographics might be different. Yes, the budgets might be different. Yes, there might not be as many units or the building might not be as big, but they still fall under that same gamma. And it starts to take you more on a diverse journey than what you originally thought. What about hotels? Same thing, right?
Same thing. The beauty of hotels, though, because I've remodeled and built hotels, is that we shut down entire floors at a time often when you're remodeling hotels. So you can shut down top floor, second to top floor, have entire floors. So the volume actually, the profit margins might be less, but the volume is more. So it offsets. So it's still a profit margin for you.
And they're a lot quicker.
They are a lot quicker.
The demand on them is a lot quicker because obviously, and we have seen this, we walked one recently within the past year, I believe, where they wanted, this particular ownership group wanted to basically keep half of it hotel and then convert the upper suites and the high-end units and expand them and have us build those out to more suites where they were rentable apartments. And I thought it was a genius idea. What made it even more genius was it was close to a local university or education establishment where, you know, when they asked us for our opinion, I don't know if you remember this, our opinion was, well, it's a genius idea because you have a lot of people that attend this university. They're looking for apartments. And you also have a lot of international students. So us doing our due diligence and looking at how we can be a benefit to the client wasn't necessarily at that time the benefit of our quality of work and our timely turnbacks. It was the benefit of understanding and doing the research. You have a lot of international students that attend this university or this school, which means a lot of parents and a lot of family members come in to visit these individuals. Yes. So with that being said, now you have a hotel and you have a living establishment for people to reside in and stay there year round, and then people that need to visit. So I thought it was a very genius idea that they were looking at. I don't know what came about of it. I think financing, they decided to go a different route. We didn't end up doing that, but it really opened, I think, our eyes up to seeing the possibilities of not just hotel conversions, but the possibilities how to think outside the box, which I love, on converting this to a livable establishment that has still hotels for short stays, but it still offered the amenities of pool, restaurant, everything you get at a hotel. So it was really very unique.
It was a hybrid option.
It was a hybrid option. And we've also seen it, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have seen this as well, where there's been articles in regards to old malls that are starting to become converted to apartment communities at the mall. And one of the things I posted years ago was they should keep all the amenity spaces inside the mall. One, you now keep restaurants open, you keep small businesses open within a mall, but they really wanted to convert these into apartments. I thought that was a very genius idea as well. And I know that they are moving forward in certain areas with those things. Hopefully we'd be able to get on that because that would be freaking fun.
It would be fun.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be done in that arena for sure when it comes to just expanding, not just us, a company, our horizon, but other interior designers that we work with, what type of ideas, because you don't take a space like that, for instance, a mall and convert it into something basic. No, you're going to want to go way outside the box on that one, make it definitely artsy, fartsy, and eclectic, and man, that would be so cool to see. Hopefully they get one done here soon so we can actually go visit it. So getting into different states again, back to the original thing. So we've got, hotels that we are able to do. We've got retirement communities that we're able to do. We've got TI or build out commercial spaces we're able to do.
It's also student housing.
Student housing is a big one. Very big one. Get into a little bit more of that and how you see that fitting into not just Premier structure, but what you're seeing in student housing when it comes to the future and what these young lads are looking for when it comes to student housing.
So the cool thing about student housing is that when we look at like an apartment complex for, say, unit interior renovations, how long do those take typically? What's the cycle between what and what?
You're talking about per unit?
No, just lengthwise. How many years does it take between what and what to?
Depends on the scope, but 24 to, let's just be very vague, but 24 to 48 months at the absolute most, depending if it's a long-term, short-term.
An apartment complex is more in the 3 month, or excuse me, student housing is more in the 3 to 4 month range.
Yeah.
It'll happen over like a summer semester where the students aren't there, where they have their summer break. We will take a student housing building or buildings and renovate the entire thing over a summer.
Yep.
So it is a hyper fast project where, for you to plan that correctly and be diversified in getting into student housing renovations, the profit is there. It's a profitability to have a project that otherwise would be a 2 to 3 year project. Here, you're knocking that out in an entire summer.
Yeah, I think that it's important to point out. I mean, we had that opportunity. For the viewers, listeners out there, we had an opportunity to go to, it was Cal State, if you remember, Cal State University. And the importance, again, first series or series one, first episode we did here on this 2-part series, talking about timing, how important timing is as well. It wasn't in the right time for us to do it at that point. We weren't in California. We're not in California now, but what a great opportunity to be able to sit down and look over drawings and plans for Cal State University. And it was just literally, hey, can you guys come in? Can you renovate this entire establishment? I don't even know how they got a hold of us. They just heard about us or knew something. But
it was a friend of a ownership group.
Was it?
Yeah,
I don't
it was
remember.
ownership groups. One ownership group friends with another ownership group and said, hey, these guys are nailing our unit interior renovations. You need to speak with them.
Yeah. I don't really remember the whole context of it, but what I do remember the most is the excitement in knowing that the possibilities are kind of endless when it comes to that. So again, the diversification within a company is knowing we're still doing renos. There's still RENOS, but it's a different dynamic. It's a different picture. And I think that also as a company excites us because our employees get excited. Why? It's, again, stagnant. People that do the same thing every day, day in, day out, they become very proficient at it. They become experts at what they do. And we talked about, again, in a previous podcast that I said, if you become an expert in something, I think it's good, obviously, to stay there when to do the work. But if you become an expert at something, you need to spread your wings a little bit. And you shouldn't stay in that, that pathway or that road. If you're an expert in something, you should diversify, you should get out and you should learn a different skill or learn a different technique of business. So that way you're not just slated for this one road, that you're able to do multiple things. So when it comes to these different states that we're looking at, and obviously there's going to be viewers, listeners out there who are in these states that will be looking us up online, that don't know anything about us. Why choose a company like Premier when it comes to hotel renovations or assisted living facilities?
Several reasons. First of all, we're good at what we do. We're really good. We communicate well. We project manage well. We have teams that we put together that are dedicated for your project. They have weekly updates or daily, even as some clients ask for. So we pretty much check almost all, if not all, the boxes for what clients need and want in a contractor.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's important to know also that part one of this series, you had made mention that when it comes to our policies and procedures and how we scale, we don't change anything. So I think for people out there that are interested, the biggest thing is look at the culture that we've created in Seattle, look at the business model we've created in Seattle and the popularity we have, and realize that that same model that we've created here is part of that model that goes with us. In series one, we talked about it. If you haven't watched or listened to series one, please do that. But it helps for people to understand that what we have created here, we will take wherever we go. The difference is when you're talking about diversification, what we're simply saying now is we have now started to evolve and diversify ourselves to understand that what we currently do in Seattle or in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, we might not necessarily do in those other states. We might jump to different areas of business that you don't see here in the Pacific Northwest. Does that mean that if somebody comes to us tomorrow and asks us, hey, can you do a TI for us here in Seattle or in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon? Can you do hotels? I heard you talking about it. Can you do assisted living facilities? Do we turn them down?
No, we don't. We look at their projects. We then discuss with them their scopes of work or help them develop them. Then we price them out with them, and then we give them feedback on any design elements they might have that don't necessarily pencil for the return they're looking for.
I think it's also important to note that for those people out there that are looking or that are interested, what we do as a company, and please interject if I miss something here, but what we do as a company, it's to benefit the client in the sense that that client now has confidence in the fact to know that if they are in a different state as well, and they're that different state partner or same company, obviously, but different coworkers that are in that state that are looking for somebody that can't find it. We're seeing a lot in Idaho. They are able to come back to Washington State or ask their resources. And those resources that they ask, those people know what these guys do here, they will also do for you there. Why? Because of how we've set our company up again for scaling reasons. We don't change. There's nothing different about what we do. And I think that that is so important for people to know. And for the people out there that are looking to grow again, don't change who you are. Don't change what you're doing. If you're going to do any changing, just learn more and challenge yourself and don't be scared. Change the type of business that you do, but keep it centralized in who you are, what your company culture is. That doesn't change.
Agreed.
Expand. What else do you got on diversification?
Do it. It's important. It's very important to diversify. Again, as we said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And the key to that's going to be looking at other areas of the market that you can perform that work in. Diversify.
If somebody wants to go to a different location and they're interested or they've been asked to go to a different location, we've talked about previous episode. Make sure you understand your demographics, right? Make sure you understand the culture, the people that are there. Different locations, obviously, there are different people. There are different cultures, different locations, different climates, right? Stucco, hardy, certainty, all these different construction elements that the audience members, you don't know what that is. It's just type of exteriors. But you have to understand and you have to know those because there's hotels, for instance, in Texas, there's hotels in Arizona that are built with stucco. And, hey, we want you to do a full exterior clad. We want you to do a full renovation on the exterior, interior property, asset reposition. You got to know what you're doing, right? And
Very much so.
For the people that are out there that are looking to scale or go to different locations, my suggestion, and again, it's only mine, my suggestion is don't go too far from home right away. We mentioned our first state was Oregon, which is like kissing cousins. It's literally right there. Then the second state we're going to, which is like another, right next to us is Idaho. And we kept it close like that for a reason. One, it allows us to scale quickly. It's quickly in the sense that it took time for us to do, but we can get a team there fairly inexpensive, fairly quick to be able to set up and go. We'll talk about, we're already in Oregon again, but let's talk about, Idaho for that instance. It's close enough that the risk is minimal to us. So the reward is greater than the risk at this moment. Going somewhere like Texas that is 3,400 miles or 2,300 miles, however far it is away, there's a lot more risk that's involved in that. So my suggestion obviously would be go somewhere that's closer to home. And if you can't get out of state, at least go to a different location within that state. For us, we're benefited by having mountains. So we have Eastern Washington and Western Washington. We've done and we do a lot of work in Eastern Washington right now because the labor pool there is not as great. So we've been over there a lot. But just that small step allowed us to dream and think bigger and to start really pushing our team and us as leaders to start thinking outside the box, different states. Well, if we can do it in Eastern Washington, why could not we do it in Idaho? And I think that that's where it was born and blossomed from, having the confidence to be close to it. Not quite there yet because of timing. Let's see how this performs. Okay, we think we can do it. And then our senior leadership team says, listen, it's only X amount of miles away. Well, what do you mean? Because I'm over here thinking it's 2,300 miles or, being funny, but it's not. And so then it's the logistics side of, well, it's a different state, so there's a risk and it's a little scary, but it's not that far away, right? So I think for companies out there, again, that are looking to scale, be diversified, combining those two elements, stay somewhere close at first so you can get comfortable with what you're doing and understand your funds and your finances and stuff like that.
It's much more organic if you're staying close to home.
In which way?
You grow in that direction.
Yeah.
Rather than go from Washington to Florida, for instance. When you're going from Washington to Oregon, it was very organic. It made sense. The culture, the demographic, very similar. We move towards Idaho, start to see some changes as we go Eastern Washington. We see changes in the demographics.
That's right.
Into Idaho and then into Montana. But it's an organic growth because we're moving that direction sustainably.
And I think that when you lined out the states that we are actually going to, there is a game plan behind why we chose those states and what times we've chosen to do them, and they fall in line. And if you notice the last one, Arizona, before that you've got Texas, but those are further, definitely further away. And for us, it was important. And obviously, again, for those people that own businesses out there that are looking to do what we're doing, it was important for us to know that not just we could do it, but it was important for us to actually look at how it's done, perfect that in which we're doing it, and then be able to scale to further locations, because then the process becomes easier because we know what we're doing. If we just went right to Texas or we went right to one of these other, even Montana's quite far from us, I don't think it would be as beneficial, and we'd probably have to deal with a lot of hiccups that we wouldn't have had to deal with if we started close to home, right? So,
and then back to, as you mentioned, similar to the in and out, we're going to continue to take the core team of leadership that knows what they're doing as we're diversifying into other markets. We'll continue to take them to those markets where they're comfortable going with us, train the local talent that's there, and establish ourselves.
And you got to have funds to be able to do it again. That's a big one. Making sure that, just to recap right here at the end of this part 2, is making sure that you have the funds to be able to do it first and foremost. It's set aside, and it's got to be profitable. That's the number one thing. You can't take any risks if you're not seeing profits. Why? Because if there's no profit there, there's no growth, right? So you have to have a game plan in place, and you got to be willing to do whatever it takes to hit that mark that you set, that financial mark. I know I said this is the end, but I like to talk. I do want to point this out, that the finance aspect of it and the diversification that we are talking about today, it goes hand in hand with the finances. We are not saying that we're being diversified or we're a diverse company because that's just Premier's way. No, we understand that the market is fickle, and we understand that the locations that we're going to might not produce enough funds for us to be able to scale again and go to another location. So part of our diversification as a company is to make sure that we are well-rounded in other areas of business, so that way we don't have to rely on one source of income. We can rely on different avenues to accomplish and reach our goal. Would you say that's fair?
I do think it's fair.
And that would allow us then at that point in time to know, hey, if we can do this here and be diversified, now we can go to this state and be diversified as well. And I did mention stucco, and I mentioned these other exterior elements. We can talk about that later on, about how important it is for market rates and how important it is for materials and stuff like that. But recognizing and realizing that not just being diverse means you're going to these different elements. It's understanding what those elements are. Again, apartments can have full exterior siding, can be one type of material, and then you go to a different state and you do see some of those. But if you're only skilled in this one area, it's going to limit you on how you're actually scaling, because you're not going to be able to do, again, for some place like Arizona or Texas, if you've got a lot of stucco in California, if you don't know what you're doing there, well, you have to recognize that a predominant amount of buildings that are there are in this particular exterior material. So you're limiting yourself. So make sure you go into it with an open mind again and learn all you can about that area, what it's about, and become an expert in those type of materials to be able to get the full fruits of your labor.
What do we want to talk about next time?
I think we want to get into partnerships. That was a big one that has been asked of us. So we are going to get into partnerships. We're going to talk with some of our local partners we have here that we have known for many, many, many years. And what does partnerships mean to us as a company, to them as a major supplier, to us and to other people and our competitors, which is okay with us. But what is a partnership to us? We'll get into that. We'll talk more about what we believe partnerships should be, what they should look like, and the pros and cons of when they aren't what we expect them to be, and how that can turn ugly real quick. And it's unfortunate, but it's part of the business. But stay tuned for that, because we will get into partnerships. We'll have more guests on, and we will have 2 guests on the next episode. So that'll be fun.
Stay tuned, and we'll see you next time for partnerships.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.